Can you make clear, like, what are some of the foundational principles of feng shui?
Feng Shui is about moving energy to be more positive than negative. In other words, each corner, I do the black sack type of feng shui. And so that means that each corner has a representation. There's another kind that you do it by the compass. I do more, you walk into a room. That's the way that I work with the energies of home. And when you walk into a home, and let's say you're having a hard time with your knowledge, and in your knowledge corner, you have your dirty laundry, you have empty boxes, you have a dusty table, right? No judgment here. We all have a life, you know, but it's kind of like, well, maybe if you move things, get things moving, you'll help. Like for me being very dyslexic, when I moved into this house, in my knowledge corner, I had my dirty laundry. And I could not think straight. I was always discombobulated. I was frustrated with myself. People would say, my husband even said, when we first met, Natasha, you speak Natashanese, because I couldn't say a sentence right. Right. And so with that I cleaned up that. I put my dirty clothes in the closet with the clothes, and then I put dictionaries and I put my stones. I put different things there, and I can notice that it my brain can work better, even though if I have dyslexic moments where I don't spell things right. Matter of fact, on my on my some of my memes and stuff like that, I kind of go, "Oh God!" When I read it, it was said right, but when I look at it now, it's like, "Oh, geez, that's embarrassing." But I am who I am, and I do what I do. But there there is that point where now, with having that, I can always tell when I'm struggling. I clean up my necklaces, I clean up my stuff, right? If my husband and I are struggling with discomfort with each other, I go check out my marriage corner. I If my yard is weedy, I'll weed my corner. I'll dust the area. Sometimes I just need to pick up a statue that I have and put it down. So, like in this corner is my relationship corner, but this is in my spiritual room. So, up above, I
Mhm.
have my relationship with my husband, which is love and a couple dancing. And then the next one down is my relationship with angels. Then I have an altar that has the animals and different intentions. And then I have my shelf that has books with trees and fairies. And then I have my family albums. So, this is my relationship with the energies that I have. I want to have a good relationship with everybody. Now, with like this corner here is my helpful people corner, because my helpful people corner, I want the universe to work with me. And I work with the Native American, First Nation, the tribal belief in Mother Mary or the earth. And so, how do I work with the team that I have? And how do I call in spirit to help me move my life? And then, over here's my prosperity corner. And, so there's different corners that you can represent. And if you work with the energies, you actually can get some help. So, like, if you want a relationship and you have single things, you have a dead plant, and you have dead dusty, and you're like, that's where you dump all your medicine. What kind of relationship are you pulling into your world, right? So it's a thing that you can work with your life. Like, I had a friend that I helped her feng shui her house, and we walked into her bedroom and there was no color, and it was like she was having a hard time getting inspired. So we fixed some things. Went to Ross, got things on dollar sales and stuff like that, got some color, some inspiration. And now she says, now my house is a home. I have inspiration when I walk in. I feel like I can go and do things. So that's been the blessing about feng shui, is it helps the energy move with you, and you can move with it. Like, I don't clean my house, I re-feng shui my house, so that I hate cleaning, but I re-feng shui my house so that it kind of help move things along. And if something doesn't feel right, that's a natural feng shui of you. If something feels good and you want to put it there, that's a good natural way of balancing your house's energy. I
So
hope
like
that
feng
explained
shui.
it a little bit.
Yeah, so basically with feng shui, you're decorating your home, but more specifically, you're having uh, designated corners. Is it in each room?
Yes.
Okay, so you're
So
having like this.
you have the layout. You have the layout. So let's say, and the bagua is the sections of the of the bagua. So in on the bagua you have helpful people, you have creativity, you have relationships, you have how you're perceived in this world, you have prosperity, you have health and ancestors, and then the knowledge corner, and then you have how you're going to be. So when you're going onto your property has the bagua over the whole thing. Okay.
Mhm,
Then you bring the bagua down to a smaller area. You walk in your front door. You put the bagua for your house. Okay. And then you bring the bagua down smaller. You walk into a room, and wherever the doorway is, you change that bagua to that area.
mhm.
And then you can even do it to your desk. You can do it like I've done it to my altars, you know. So my altar has a prosperity corner, a relationship corner, and, you know, all these different things so that it works to its greater good. So your bagua goes from your property to your house to a room to a desk. You know, you go down into these different areas, and you can change the energy of the house. Like for me, I have 2 bathrooms and a septic system in my relationship corner. But what did I do is I really put intention in that corner, like, and that the part of the house has a missing area too. So I made that missing area a room, and then I really make sure that that area is spiffed up, to put in quotation marks, so that it really helps my relationship. In this house, most everybody has gotten divorced when they moved out, but for us, I've now been married 32 years. My husband has turned from being an alcoholic since 14 to being now sober for almost 12 years, and has gone from being very black and white to saying the other day, "Hey, babe, I think I'm even intuitive." And so, so with that when you are, if you're working with the energies of the home, you can actually heal your life more than you can then it's a hindrance.
Okay, so yeah, you're being very intentional with the way that you build your home and things like that. That's very interesting because I think
Yes.
that I mean, obviously people do decorate their home, but this is a method that people use in different feng shui is a method that people use
Mhm.
to enhance the decorating experience of their home, right?
Exactly,
One-
more purposeful. Now, I can tell you I'm more of a practical feng shuiist. So in other words, like, if you're struggling with your life, I like to give people a purpose for certain rooms. Like, I walked into one house and they're like going, "I don't know why I can't get things healthy again." And I go, "Well, you have a sliding glass door in every health corner of your house." So we kind of did some things energetically. Or I notice that where there's energy coming in from like a road or something, and they're wondering why they always have headaches when they stand at this kitchen sink, you know. And so I kind of help them work with the practicality. Now there's some feng shuiists will say you need a frog in this corner, you need chimes in this corner, you need this and that. I'll say chimes because we need to break up the energy of the, like, I have a long hallway, I put chimes in the middle of it and I ring it a couple times when I walk by just to shift up the energy, because the energy can get stagnated. Like me living at the end of a dead end road here, I have to negotiate the stagnicity of the road. I have things to help the energy move so that it doesn't get stagnant in a certain place, because almost stagnant energy is more damaging to a life and its purpose than having, let's say, you know, dirty laundry in a corner that you keep moving. You know what I mean? The stagnation is what can deaden part of our world and our knowings. You know, like if we have a lot of broken pieces, we wonder why our back constantly hurts, you know, in our health corner, or we're having problems with our health. Or like if you have alcohol in a certain corner of your room, like I walked into another house, and no judgment here. I don't judge. If I didn't do it in this lifetime, I did it in another lifetime. Why should I judge? You know?
Yeah.
So there was alcohol in certain corners of their room, and it was always in the same corner. And I was like, do you have problems in da 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 life? Do you have problems in da 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 situations? Do you? Oh yeah, I do. I go, okay, it's not wrong that you have alcohol, but let's shift it up so it's not so intentful in certain corners of your room.
And so with feng shui too, another thing that is a focus is how chi interacts with the house, right? And so
Mhm.
can you describe chi and how it interacts? How does like chi energy interact with the house? How
Well,
does it mingle with your household?
I understand that people talk about spirit, and I call that energy. So like if we open up doors, we open up our doors after, the first fresh breath, the first day of summer, right? That we get the chi, the energy, the spirit of the world coming in, swirling around, swirling into our house, right? And then it swirls back out if we open up a window. And that's what chi is. It's energy. It's the energy. And we want to have as much positive energy in our world, because there is enough shadow work. There is enough darkness. There is enough um, dis-ease in our world. Why should we have that when we come home? And so when something doesn't feel right, that's going to create more hardness, let's say this picture here that's behind me, that if the one that's right here, that if that had bad memories, let's say I had an ex-husband who was abusive that gave me that, but it was the right picture for that corner, it's gonna keep causing me to have that bad memory. So get rid of it, move it to another place, give it away to someone that you know who really likes it, that doesn't have that memory, right? And so with that creating the better chi, the better energy, the better spirit of the house is what feng shui is helpful with, so that we don't get the stagnation, the dis-ease of the mind. We don't sit, like I tell people when they smudge the house, they complain about someone being always down. I say, when was the last time that you pounded out that person's chair, you know Oh, I've never done that. Oh, pound it out. It's like for me, after a bad night's sleep, how many times do we shake out our pillow? How many bad nights do we have? And then we figure out that we can have more bad nights. There's a lot of times if I have a bad night, or I'm a lot of thinking in a night, I'll pick up the pillow, shake out that energy, put the pillow back on, and I can rest more easier the next night. So energy is very much, we are energy. And so when we work with it more on a positive note, then it gives us a chance to negotiate the story. And many times it's us that carry the energy of certain things. Like I did another feng shui with a house, and the people thought, is there any bad energy here? And I go, no. They go, oh, because my dad had this, and they were hoarders, and da da da. And I go, okay, I'm not feeling anything from here. Yes, I smudged it, I cleansed the energy, but it's you who's bringing in the bad energy, because you keep bringing that energy, that moment back. And so, what can you do to change and shift your energy? So we did some energy work with that person. I did a clearing of his body, and he felt a lot lighter. And then that gave him a different perspective with the stuff that was in his house. And that's what it is that changing the perspective, changing the knowings can change our world. It really can change our world.
And so how can people get in sync like that, like with their household, or maybe they live with a partner, right? And then they can sense that they're bringing home bad energy. How can someone get in sync with the object in their household and be very connected to their house and what's going on around the house as well as inside of the house?
Well, understanding that there is energy. Now, for me, I do protection in my house. So if you see what's up in the window, I have dragons, angels, stones, and different things, right? I have a
Yeah.
cemetery that is, as a crow's fly, about 50 yards from here. So and I'm a bright light, so I put protection up in my house. I do the same thing with my doors. I have food dogs in my doors, but I also do a form of a shield, and I call it like a rain shower or a waterfall energy, where I put certain rocks that want to do this job. I ask them to do the job, and I put a rock on one side, and then I bring the rock up and around on the other side, and I bring it down and I put it on the other side of the door. And I ask the energies of that to protect that whatever walks through this door is only for the greater good, and that whatever is on somebody or stuck on somebody has to stay outside the house. And so you can do those protection modes to help protect. Now, things can wear down. And so if you notice that things are sneaking in, let's say if you live by a busy road, you may have to do up a little bit more protection, shift it up as the energies change. But that's part of the dance is to figure out how to negotiate. Now I have, like, on my front porch, I have food dogs, angels. I have a Native American. I have a gargoyle, that I asked to support the protection. But I ask these things, even like a gargoyle. You can believe it's real or you don't believe it's real. But I understand that its intention of a gargoyle is protection. In my belief system, that yes, that like everything, there's good gargoyles, bad gargoyles, but this one's a good one. And I asked him to help protect. And so with that he does help shift things out, keep things from coming in. I had a neighbor on the other side of my dead end road here that she did meth, and she sold meth. Never had a problem. Never had a problem. The only problem I had was when my husband parked near the property line and he had his radio stolen out of his truck. Other than that, we never had a problem. We never had anybody steal anything from us. We never had anything because I used my protection. I asked the angels, the fairies to protect my property. And I also did other types of protections by walking a grid around my property and that kind of stuff. And that all that is about is energy. And if you work with the energy, it's amazing how it can support you. But the thing is working with it. But if we choose to work against it, that's where we get the stumbling. That's when we get the application of the dis-ease that's in our life.
Yeah, like one thing more specifically though, because I don't think we hit the answer to the question
Oh,
there.
I'm sorry about that.
Like, for example, like some people don't know that there's necessarily they get evil spirits that come into their house,
Hmm.
and then they start to wake up, and then they, realize that, oh, maybe my house is full of these bad things.
Spirits.
But
Hmm.
yeah, but like, how can people know or get to know that, okay, there's things going on in my house that before I was asleep and all these things were happening.
Hmm.
How do people wake up and start to see these things happening?
A lot of times they walk in and they just feel uncomfortable in their house.
Hmm.
Sometimes there's just they have a hard time breathing, let's say, or they get chills, or they just feel uncomfortable. They're restless. They sit on a couch and they keep, it's like, they just keep moving. They can't get comfortable. They don't know why they can't get comfortable. And when there's that situation that, or if you feel like you're being watched, that there's that part of that. There's a part of us that knows that something doesn't feel right. And so that's where you start noticing. And then there's some spirits that they start making themselves known. They'll move things, they'll make noise, they'll like I lived in an apartment where there was a glowing the door, there's a light underneath the door of the bathroom. It's like, because it was glowing all the time. The light was off, but it was always glowing. And so with that there's these portholes. I've had portholes in my house that I had to block up. Portals are like energy fields that go through to the earth, and then they open up, and you can have darkness that comes up from that. You can dark energies. You can have good energies come up. Sometimes it's just a lot of energy that comes up and down, and that's this just disturbing in our being. We kind of feel like you don't want to walk in that area, or you feel like that area is never light. It's hard to get it light. You can't light it up. It's always dark. It's always feeling heavy and dark, and you want to almost walk around that spot. We kind of do things unconsciously that are the conscious tellers that there's something that's not right in our home.
I love that. So you're being conscious of one of your actions, how you go around your environment, and then
Hmm.
two, also paying attention to feelings of discomfort.
Yeah,
What is it? Unease,
yeah.
all that kind of stuff. Okay.
And two, if you feel like that, there's sometimes where it's like, you have a closet that you just can't clean out. You keep stuffing things in it because it's an unconscious thing I don't want to go in there. I don't want to be in there. I don't want that. I don't, you know, and so you just kind of stuff things in there. And when you do that, then it makes the energy stagnant. For me, I've had an area that I needed to get cleaned up, and I finally rearranged it for the first time since I lived in this house. And now I can say that energy has awakened in that part of my house, which I've been grateful for because I stirred it up. I stirred up the old energy that was stagnant to create new, because it was almost a suction cup to having chaos come to it. That chaotic feeling come to it when something is in disharmony with you.
And do you feel like you can breathe better? Or like, do
Oh,
you feel
yeah.
like you can think more? Like, what happened as soon
Mhm.
as you cleared it? Like,
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's actually I have a closet and a small room that and I would walk through it to get to my spiritual room. This is my spiritual room. This is where I do private sessions, if I can do it in person or Zoom, or my shows that I do. And so the closet would I would keep shoving things in there, and it would be like a storage closet. And then the other room was just, hodgepodge of things. And so now that room, I made it as my craft room. It's more my inspirational room. And then the filing cabinets and things that I had in that room, I put in the closet. So I have more business orientated in the closet, more organized that way. And it's been like, I don't want to put things in front of the filing cabinets. I want to use the filing cabinets. So I've been keeping it more open. And then I put a wind chime in front of it to help when I feel like that energy is getting stagnant again, because I want to create a new habit, because the old habit is to put things in that closet. I want to create a new habit. So I ring the chime to create that break up that nope, this is not going to happen anymore.
that's awesome.
It is very awesome.
That's really interesting. It's definitely expanding my mind.
Yeah,
So,
it is. It's another layer of, I'm going to call it consciousness. It's another layer of consciousness because our home is a representation of us. You look at what's behind me. You see so much, and feng shui is not about minimalism. It's about purposefulness. Now, I can tell you that there are things I need to shift in my home that needs to go out. Yes, because I'm done with that part of my life. That's a thing that right now it's good to look at is the item. It's is the item that I have from my past needs? Is it for my now needs, or is it for my future needs? And ask the item that, and it's amazing what it will tell you. It'll be like, "No, I want to go," or "No, I want to stay." This is something you can really use me for. And so there's that balance of you know and remember that when you're asking an item or you're asking the universe something, the first thing you hear, the very first thing you hear is usually more the answer that is truthful. If you let your mind take over or your old patterns take over, that's going to be more sabotaging. But if you listen to that first thing you hear, I want to go. Oh, you want to go? Okay, I'm not quite ready to relieve you, but I'll put you in a box and I'll put you in the garage for a little while. And then after a while, you kind of go and go, oh, I can let go of you now, and you release it, right? So there's this process of how we can negotiate life.
would you say like you feel at home at your house because of this, or is there still like, do you feel like when you interact with your home, there's still like corners or areas that seem off to you that don't give you that feeling of being home, especially inside of your own body as well, like where you feel comfortable, you feel relaxed, you feel like your heart is open.
Yeah, I would say that some of them are unfinished projects that I have. You know, like I rearranged my spiritual room and on these two closets, and I still have a couple things that I've just put down just because I couldn't finish the project. You know, and I need to finish that. That's feeling disharmony in my spiritual room. I tend to be a little bit more cluttery naturally, and so I'm noticing that I have certain areas that oh, I'll deal with this later. Oh, I'll deal with this later. I'll deal with this later. And no, I need to pull that basket out and go through it and recycle it, recycle what I can. And so yes, for your answer, yes, there are places in my house, but that's where I use the opportunity that itch, that scratch, that this is starting to bother me, to move that part of my area along to my greater good. And I also know that we went through a major, re-lifting up through the equinox, the spring equinox and the new moon, and a lot of the energies that were happening that is going to set us up for what we are going to be going through in the next 3 to 6 months. And I really want to have a good intention during that. So I'm using this opportunity to set up a lot of good patterns, which is relieving myself of, like, next to the couch where I sit, I have a basket that I put a lot of my paperwork in. It's on the call to get it done. It's on the
And
call to get it done here soon. So,
I want to transition more into a little bit of relationships here.
okay.
So, actually, in your most recent talk, you talked about use the analogy of a DNA strand and you compare it to relationships. So, can you go a little bit into how, how DNA can relate to, and how you use that analogy to describe relationships?
So when we're talking about relationships need to breathe. And a lot of people have a hard time trusting in relationships. And they have a hard time trusting themselves that they'll be okay if that person does certain things, or isn't around them all the time. And it's time to start trusting. And I look at the DNA strand, and if it's not in the 3D form, but it's in like a picture of one, the flat, that the DNA strand kind of goes out and comes back in. And as we're doing relationships, we're going to have times when we're together. We're going to be where, we're together when the DNA is twisting, that moment of twist. And we need to have that connection, talking, dinner together. Hey, how was your day? Sure, I appreciate who you are. Those conversations. But then it's like we go away for the day and we go through our work, we go through our life, we go through, what do we do, and we go away, we have our experiences, we learn, we have that individual walk in our day. But we need to come back again at the top with a DNA twist again, and come back into the greater good of who we are, and talk again. What is your day? Like for me, my husband doesn't really, for the longest time, he didn't want to hear about me. I have a job at an elementary school. He hates other people's kids. He doesn't want to hear about other people's kids. Well, that was my day job, right? And then he didn't understand my spirituality. But the thing is, though, I knew that in order to help him be him, I had to have an experience of breath in, breath out with him. And so it was about listening to him, helping him do that. And then I would slip in, hey, I'd really appreciate if you would listen to me about my day, even if you don't agree with it. And so I would have to do that. So that would be the communication time, right? But then also, we need to have time together that is apart, like my husband, if he doesn't go play golf, he drives me insane. you know, it's insanity. He laughs with the guys. He has fun. He strikes a ball. It teaches him how to be in life, right? So if I kept him home all the time, I would be strangling him. What would that do for our relationship? It would strangle. I have to travel. He knows if I don't travel, I deaden. It doesn't let me expand. It doesn't let me breathe. It doesn't let me do. So I go down and visit a friend down in California once a year, and it's my expansion time. And so he grows a lot when I'm gone, And I grow when I'm gone, but we have to come back and kind of reconnect. Like he said the other, this last time I was gone, hey babe, you're gone a couple more days than usual, and I have to get used to having a wife home again. And so it's that realigningness, especially since we're so black and white about our lives. It's he's 6 foot, I'm 5 foot, he's dark haired, I'm blonde. He was the alcoholic, I never drank. It's like we're totally opposites, and so it takes us some work to come together sometimes. But it's that questions, it's the answers, it's the breath, it's the hey babe, I love you, I'm grateful for you, thank you for being home again. What amazing thing that you did. It's whatever language you can use to help out with that. And I can tell you that it did take some work to sometimes do that. He was a narcissist when he drank. He's a double Leo. Leos tend to be narcissistic in personalities. We all have narcissistic attitudes with ourselves. I'm an only child, so I can get one too myself. But it's that breath in, breath out. How can we work that? And I can tell you, when you work a relationship and you give it the breath in, breath out, you get to be who your greater self is. And I can tell you, my husband's not a narcissist anymore, you know, and I'm working on being more of a loving blessing to him too. And it's that, how can we work with each other? And after 32 years, I practiced a lot. He's practiced a lot.
Yeah, some people, though, like because of maybe emotional patterns of neediness, they don't separate like that. Like they have to cling
Hmm.
to the person.
Yes.
So how do you deal with the fear of like, so when you start to separate, for example, when you start to have your own time, how do you deal with the fear of uncertainty that, hey, maybe this person, are spending some time apart, this person might dip and leave me, or this person might have second thoughts about the relationship or something like that because they've spent time away to think, you know, how do you deal
Hmm.
with all that uncertainty?
Well, that's the thing about relationships, like when I was married to my ex-husband, that time apart, it showed me who he truly was. Would I want to have that in a lifelong partner? Would I want to have that uncertainty? But the thing about relationships, the more you love yourself, the more you can love somebody else. So uncertainty, on trust, check in if you can. And this is a more of an awakening thought. How can you find love for yourself? Because if you're uncertain about that other person, how are you uncertain in yourself? People around us are mirrors to us. So if we're uncertain about what they're going to do, how can we be how are we uncertain with ourselves? If we're angry about somebody doing something, what is that anger triggering in us that we need to work on? And that's more what relationships are about, is that triggering us into more enlightened work. Sadly said, partners aren't, I mean, you can find a partner that's ease and grace, but there's still that tug and pull that we need to do to waken up. And I can say that it's not easy to trust that process, but sometimes we need to take that breath out in a relationship to check in to see who we are still. Because sometimes we immerse ourselves so much in the relationship that we lose track of, oh, I like to paint, that painting was something that I really enjoyed. Or we immerse ourselves in the relationship, and we forget about our friends, and we forget that our friends who made us laugh, you know? And so how can we find that breath in, breath out? And it's practice to do better. It's not about right or wrong, and it's not about expectations. It's about practice to do better, because we are not perfect. We're humans are not perfect. We're perfectly imperfect in the moment that we're doing the better we can in making decisions. And all we can do sometimes, like when my husband first got sober and he went and played golf with his friends, sometimes the mantra I had was, I trust, I trust, I trust, I trust, I trust that I'll be okay, even if things fall apart around me. You know, I'm trusting, I'm trusting, I'm trusting things. I'll be okay, even though life may fall apart around me. And that's whatever you can do to work that out, because it is a scary place to trust. It's a very scary place to trust. But if you can work through that and strengthen that muscle, it becomes blessings. But it takes a little bit of work to strengthen that trust muscle.
Yeah, and also like in a time apart, that's where you're creating space and more. I think when you create space in yourself, I mean that's where the
Hmm.
expansion happens. Like when I meditate, for example, I'm creating space inside of myself to. I'm just creating space inside of myself by centering in myself in my awareness. I'm expanding and connecting myself to spirit, which is expansive, which is everywhere. But
Yes.
coming back to relationships, though, in that space is where you really like how you said, like you see who the person truly is, and the colors come out. Sometimes people don't. Uh, what do you call it? They're not used to the space, or they're not used to the growth and the expansion. They'd rather stay stuck in a narrow way of
Hmm.
thinking and stuff like that.
It's
Um,
easier to stay where we're at and know what we know than it is to expand ourselves and to grow out of that fear-based place. You know,
mm.
it's easier to stay where you know, where you're comfortable. Some people like to be diseased, disharmony, happiness because it's what they know. It's more fearful to be on the other side of that. But I can tell you, walking through that door, there's only rewards. My husband, who's been now a sober 11 years, hated the idea of being sober because the fact he'd been drinking since he was 12 years old. He was 48 years old at the time, right? So he was in his 40s. The most fearful thing he could do was figure out who he was after sobriety. But he practiced that muscle and practiced strengthening that muscle, and he strengthened that trust in himself and liking himself. There's many times I would walk up and hold him, hug him, and he says, "What are you doing?" "I'm hugging you." "Oh, you gonna let go?" "No." "Oh." Pretty soon he put his arms around me. And then we would breathe, and I would let go. Now he comes up and holds me because he practiced that muscle. He practiced doing better, but he trusted. He trusted.
And one thing that I also too want to get clear on as well is also when you have that space and distance between people, and then you feel that insecure, or this is where the confusion is, where some people will label the fear of being cheated on or like fear of that person is leaving me. Um,
Because of something that
they'll think
triggered
it's
them in the
insecurity.
past.
Well,
Something that
either
triggered them in the past. Yeah.
yeah, or like what I wanted to say is that some people will think of it as a trigger,
Mhm.
but also it can be intuition picking it up when you have
Mhm.
that space to yourself. So have you found the line between, okay, this is my intuition telling me this person's cheating, this person's being apart from me, or this person's cheating on me, he's doing other stuff behind my back, or this is just me being triggered and me not trusting myself or trusting in general.
Well, and that's a scary place to be because you don't know what the word is. You don't know truly what it is. You can have a like my husband had girlfriends, not girlfriends that he was with, but he had friends that were girls. And there was a time in our relationship that we were splitting, that we were not together as much. And I don't I'm not proud of this, but I checked his phone, you know, and things were okay because I had the intuition that he was doing something. Well, he was communicating with her more than he was communicating it with me. He was having, I would call maybe more of an emotional affair than he was a physical affair, right? And so there was that intuition, but at the same time, though, what I had to do was figure out where it was coming from. And that's the question we can ask. Is this my fear or is this outside of me? And if you feel that like, oh, this is in me, because I can tell you that there's a lot of people, this is where past lives come in. And I called yesterday a past life or earlier today a past life because those things we've been, like let's say if we had a father or a mother who went out on the other, parent, you know, that or an uncle that was very abusive that way, and you saw that disharmony and you really couldn't trust relationships. Well, when somebody is leaving, you get triggered by that old childhood memory, right? Or let's say if you were killed by your mate, in a past life, or you were the maiden of someone who had 16 wives, right? That and you were always the last one to get loved, that those soul memories come back and negotiate with us during those moments. And if that fear is really, really, really strong, that's where you need to go talk to somebody. You need to come out, you need to get it out of your own being and talk to somebody. And if you could talk to somebody about, a counselor or somebody to say, is this fear realistic or is it not? you know because if we're always being triggered, there's something about that pattern that we need to look at. And sometimes that's where people like coming to someone like me who can see past lives, because sometimes it is a domino effect of something that happened in this lifetime and something in the other. But if it's something that you can start trusting and believing that you can work through, because sometimes that feeling is truth, that they are doing that. But that's where you have to go to the basics. What am I seeing? What am I hearing? What is the patterns of this other person? Are they staying at work way too late without any expectation, or are you finding that there's money being spent that there's no call for it? What kind of, because there's many different ways of doing. There's gambling addictions. There's it's not just about going out. There's other things that can be going on in a relationship that is not something you can live with. And that's where I go to that serenity prayer. Is this, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change and the wisdom to know the difference.
It's
Because
God grant me serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I
the
can,
hand
and the
and the
wisdom to know the
wisdom,
difference
no
between the both.
difference. But there's something about when I was in a trouble spot in my relationship that the statement said, grant me the courage to accept the things I cannot change and the courage to know the difference. Because of the thing that there's things in our relationships with ourselves and with others that we need to learn to either deal with them and live with them or not accept them and see where we got to go with that. And that's where sometimes that breath in, breath out with relationships, we really get to see, is this something I can live with, and see what I can't live with. And if we deal with this earlier on in the relationship, we decide if we want to be with that relationship further on. Because I can tell you, living with something for 30 years that you cannot live with doesn't always make the marriage a happy place.
And then one thing with relationships too is, at least that I've noticed, you know, sometimes there will be girls in my life that'll feel. What I've noticed is that there will be certain times when girls will feel into me. So like they'll find a certain emotion. I'm very conscious of this. They'll find a certain emotion inside of my body or something, and they'll be
Mhm.
very intrusive, and I'll start to feel traumas and things, triggers start to come up for me, and I'm just like,
Mhm.
how, like, why are they feeling so much into me? Like, sometimes I feel like I don't have space when
Yes.
they try to feel into me like that. So, like, is that a sign of intrusion, first off? And then second off, like, how do you begin to heal those things and triggers so that, you know, for your you don't take these things out on your partner and things like that. These triggers, you don't necessarily project them onto them.
Okay, so let's take a scenario that you just described. Okay. So there's a lot of people that are waking up spiritually and they get very intrusive. For me, I do not read people unless they give me permission. I use discernment. I'm very strong about that integrity for me. A lot of people, a lot of women, I'm going to say, are naturally intuitive, and they put themselves on you, right? Well, that's a conversation you can have maybe with them. Hey, you know, when you do this certain action, I feel overwhelmed by it. I'm just kind of curious. Do you know that you do that sometimes? Oh, no, I didn't know I did that. Oh, okay. Or they say, I'm not doing that. No, 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 no. Well, is that a relationship you want to have, right? So having that kind of conversation, being a little bit vulnerable and saying, hey, at this moment, this is what I'm feeling, you know, what do you realize that you're doing that? You know, and not wrong or right. I'm not saying that it's wrong or right. I mean, other people probably enjoy it, but it's something that it triggers something inside of me, and I'm just kind of curious if you can just take a step back, you know, instead of coming at me and hugging me right away, just say, "How are you today? Can I hug you?" Or, just to have a conversation before you come up and hug me and feel me, or whatever that language is that you have. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Yeah.
So it's that discernment about how does this feel in me? Yeah, yes, it's a trigger in you, but that's also, do you have boundaries? Do you have energetic boundaries? And if you don't
Mm.
have energetic boundaries, you might want to figure out what those are. Now, I use love as my defined boundary. So that boundary is defined love. So I use the example of, let's say, putting a bubble around me, or I like to use a rainbow that is the most beautiful, clean rainbow you can ever have. And this rainbow is as big as you want it, and it goes from the heavens to into earth, right? And it's 360 around you. And in that rainbow is divine love, is the
Hmm.
moment of love. And I can tell you, I walk through an elementary school system and this love works. Because you know how many attachments and emotions are in an elementary school?
Sorry, son. Yeah.
400 kids, there's 400 emotions, right? Or more, because everybody has
100
more
plus.
than,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, and perceptions and ideas and triggers and whatevers. And so when you have love, whatever comes through that love gets filtered. And if it's meant for me, it gets filtered into something that I needed to know. I needed to embrace as a teaching, right? But it shifts. Now, there's also people have an understanding that there's tough love, right? So tough love says, you know what? You don't need that. You don't, you, why do you have that? It's like, it kind of, you know, not coming in her back door, It's
Mhm.
it's that, protection. So I get that when I have like souls that I'm walking through and there's a demon that comes up and says, "Hey," and they want to come on me, and then they kind of go, "Wait a minute. No, I'm not allowed, am I?" No, you're not. No, you're what? Because when I walk into a situation, it's like I use a discernment of or the clarification. I said to my team, "You know what I do. You better protect me, and you better have that love right on me when I need it." And they do. They do. Because I can tell you that when I walk up to a student and they're having a bad moment, either I repel them and they walk away from me because they're at a different vibration and they can't handle it, because it's not up to me to change the kid, but my love knows what to do. The divine love knows what to do to help that kid. And so there's many kids who learn to trust me, and I come up and I say, "Can I hug you?" you and I do. And they get a different, they shift up a little bit of different perspective. It's one of those things, that love is one of those greatest protections. And I can tell you
Mhm.
that people say, "Oh, Natasha, you're here." It's not me necessarily, but it's who I am, what I am. They can do it. And then who I am comes forth.
Uh-huh.
Can I give an
So,
example of what divine love feels like?
yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to pull myself back. Okay. Now, you don't have to be open to this, but just witness it. I'm going to spread out love, divine love. I'm going to say the angels to come in and bring in love. Can you feel the different energies that are coming across? Because I'm saying different words.
Hmm.
And then I'm going to pull myself back. Did you feel a difference?
Yeah, I felt my heart shifts a little bit. Uh, yeah, a lot of things I didn't work on.
Exactly, exactly, because it's not for me to define it. It was me for just to be with it. And then I send it. And then sometimes I said the words trust. Sometimes I said the words acceptance. I said sometimes the understanding of guidance, you know. And so those different intentions would come because that's what I was told to put that intention into the love as the human that I am.
Mhm.
Because I was the human being with divine love. But I asked it to come and go through.
Yeah. So in terms of like energetic boundaries, like this is what I think of, especially in those moments when you have someone that you're with, they're feeling you out and stuff. Um, I started to become conscious of this because I started doing energy training, and I could feel myself concentrate on certain parts of my body, and so
Mm-hmm.
I can feel like energy move from I can move energy from one
Yes.
side of my body to another side of the body. I can feel the stagnations where it's at in my body. And
Mm-hmm.
so the more of the spirit I feel inside of my body, the more lighter I feel, the more
Mm-hmm.
lucid I can move the energy around. And so then when something or someone feels into me, I can feel something. It feels like something others reaching into me. And so there are times when I'm not conscious uh, of my own stagnations, for example. And then I feel
Yes.
somebody reach into me, for example. And then that's what I'm talking about. Like someone feels into you. It's like they can kind of reach into parts of you and you're not really conscious of it. And then they reach into you and trigger something. Um, so how do you, in a sense, establish a boundary when you're unconscious of the fact that something in you is triggered and broken? Like, how do you start
Usually
to
there's a reaction in us. Somewhere there's a reaction. And I've learned and practiced the mantra, what is this here to teach me? What is this here to teach me? And so when I get triggered or there's something that happens, and so if I'm feeling kind of like a stagnation, like let's say in the shoulder, and I'm just kind of like going, what is this here to teach me? Oh, I've been kind of caught up in myself lately. Okay, and I'll move through. But that there again is that checking in with where is things at. Like the shoulder, it's about movement, right? And it depends on if it's the right side or the left side. Am I releasing? Am I carrying too much? Am I holding myself in one position way too much? Because sometimes if our one shoulder is up too much, it's like, am I holding on to? So checking in with a little bit of that. And this is like a greater thought, but when we're looking at those triggers, a lot of times they're here to wake that part of us up so that we can analyze it, look at it, think about it, and negotiate it. Now, many of us get triggered and we're not awake enough. We get fearful. Oh, God, my hurt. Why does my heart hurt all of a sudden? Oh my gosh, and sometimes it's because our heart was so stifled because we closed down so much that it's almost like that feeling of opening up, right? It's that moment of opening up. I had a moment in Hawaii when I had a friend of mine, male friend, hug me. And he cracked open my third chakra so much that if I didn't move away from him at that moment, I would have thrown up all over him. It was that much of a crack open because I had been shut down through my grief. My parents I had three people who passed away on me within just 4 years at the same time I was having kids, and then I moved, in 1 year I sold three houses, bought one, and then my mom died of Lou Gehrig's disease the same time I had a kid, and I had a 4-year old, so my life was a lot. And then having an alcoholic at that same time who changed jobs the same year, so I was just so shut down in my chakra system. And when he hugged me, he broke me open, and it it felt like wow at the same time of holy frickin' frack, you know? And but we take those things as negativities because that's what we've practiced is that when something happens in our body, when things happen in our knowings, that they're more negative than they are positive, even if it's a negative-ish feeling. There's many times where I have an upset stomach and I'm knowing that oh wait a minute, this is going to be a great energetic day, because I've had an upset stomach and the energy is stirring in me. I'm getting triggered by that anxiety, you know. So it's that looking at it. And so I would take for you, I would check in with your energetic protections, see about your triggers, remembering that right now we're doing a lot of work with our DNA. So I would even look at what your family triggers have been in those scenarios because you've been taught well, you know? And if we can kind of get that understanding of those moments that, is this my truth right now? Or is this like my 3-year-old truth? Or is this my 10-year-old truth? Or is this my 14-year-old truth? Or is this my 18-year-old truth? You know? And really looking at what they come from. And there again is that if we have these same triggers over and over again, I would talk to somebody who can maybe help you out a little bit.
Hmm. And so just learning how to be with the trigger, learning how to talk to it is what ultimately opens you up. You mentioned though, like when that person hugged you, for you, was it frightening? Is that what you felt in the moment, like terror, or was it more of like, um, because I know,
It was just the understanding of whole I wanna swear. I mean, it's like that holy yeah, moment, you know, because of the fact that I'd been shut down for so many years with the abuse that my first husband gave me, then the alcoholic abuse of my married life at that time, and we'd been married probably for 12, 15 years at that time, that, that 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 abuse that I was going through, I had shut myself down. And this awakening that I was going through, this is what the grief of my parents did. It awakened me to tell me to be who I am today, to do the work that I am, that I was going to Doreen Virtue's therapy practitioner course because I knew I was intuitive, but how could I do that outwardly? And so when he hugged me, being a male who cared for me, when I had been shut down from men, and then knowing that I was abused when I was a child also by a male. So breaking through the boundaries of this males, that him hugging me cracked open that part of me that I had a shell around. And this is an observation I had later, but at that moment, it was a holy freaking, moment. And then I had to go through the process of integrating it. What was this here? Because you don't get answers right away when you have a holy moment. That holy oh God moment. You know, you have to decompress it. You have to ask those questions because answers don't come right away. Sometimes they do. Sometimes there's the preliminary answers that come to you. But it's that process of, oh, 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 oh. And even today, I can say that that moment has a different perspective and lessons, even speaking of it right now, that happened 12 years ago.
yeah,
Because it's that breaking it down and like my dad always said, at this moment in time we have this much information and we only know this. Tomorrow, another month from now, I'll have other information and I wish I would have made a different decision or I would have done something different. Or I wish I would have known something different, but we don't because we're at this minute in time, we're this human, we have this experience, we have this knowing. We got to give ourselves credit for where we're at.
yeah. There's definitely been people too. I notice this sometimes too, where I'll give them my presence, for example, and then I can feel like the hurt, or maybe there's something inside of them that's broken. And
Hmm.
I've in the past I would keep pushing into it, like because I wasn't conscious of it. And now that done a lot of energy work and stuff, I know like to pull myself away and pull myself back so that I don't
Hmm.
trigger them enough to scare them off. Because some people get scared when you give them your presence, and then they get scared of the fact that maybe you're too powerful for me, you're too overwhelming for me, like I can't deal with this. So you learn to like just pull yourself back and make sure that you're not pressing too much into their
Mhm.
boundaries and stuff like that. Some people don't
Well,
want to be touched too sometimes.
exactly, and that's the thing is even me when I was sharing the love, the divine love, it was up to you to receive it. I just brought it to the experience. You had a choice to receive it or not. Did you
Hmm.
notice that it surrounded you first and then you opened up to it?
Yeah.
Because it didn't go into you right away, did it? It
No.
surrounded you because of the fact that that's where
Mhm.
I understand that my love is pliable. It's flexible. It moves back and forth. If I walk by somebody who doesn't want the love, it walks around them. It's not up to me, it's not up to it to change that person. That's discernment.
Mhm.
Their choice, their knowing. Now, there's sometimes where I walk into, let's say, a classroom, and I can feel my love being cat was, like the chi energy and going around. And I can feel it going around and not touching certain kids because it's not theirs to have. Not my thing. I just present it. And if somebody wants it, they can have it. And that's the gift of somebody who's been working with energy and doing the work for a while because they have that understanding, I hope, of that integrity.
I've definitely seen that too. Like when I've shared energy with people too, that's how it is. Like if the energy goes around them, you kind of see it on their, you know, around like they're on their face first, around their body first, and then
Mhm.
it starts to seep in, like almost you're watering a plant or something.
Exactly,
The
exactly.
energy.
Because a plant that's dry doesn't get the water right away. It has to seep it in slowly, and that's up
Mhm.
to the soul's walk. There's been many a times, even with my husband, I go to his higher self. Hey, I know my husband needs this work. Do you mind if I work on him? And sometimes I hear the word no, and I have to say no. Okay, you know. And now he's getting more and more acceptable to me doing things, but there's sometimes where he's not. To this day, he likes to go down the hard road. It's like your choice, babe. Sorry. You know, I go to the chiropractor to get my knee work done. You can have limp for a month and a half. It's like that struggle, but sometimes he doesn't want it.
Mhm.
I love you enough to say I won't help you when you ask me not to. I love you enough to say I won't do what you want. I won't do what I want to do. I'll do what you want me to do.
Exactly.
That's a tricky place to be. A lot of people love beyond other people's boundaries.
Hmm.
Two strong pillars make a good roof. You got to be yourself. You got to be owning of yourself. And like and then you can be one with the other. That's the thing about people that we don't really understand sometimes, like Grandmaster Wolf says that, did I say that right? He
Yeah.
that he says that, when you label something phone, you get separation from it. Yes, but I also have an understanding that to be one with something, you have to respect the boundaries of what it is, because then you can be more one with it because you understand it differently. You understand it as it is. Like another person to another person. I understand you are you. I can't change you unless you want to be changed. So I have to respect you as the entity that you are, the being that you are. Just like I would ask the wish the same of me. But the thing is, though, we together are human, so we have that camaraderie, we have that togetherness, and so there's that separation, but togetherness at the same time, and that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah. On another house show.
Yeah, we've already been going for a while, but I have time. I love talking about this kind of stuff, and conversations are a blessing.
Hmm. I mean, so last question. I
Yes.
know we could definitely keep going, but I'm gonna Stop right here. Any final advice for people, and then where can people find you?
The final advice that I can maybe support somebody with is that remember that you are loved, even though your mind says that you're not. Many of us have struggled with that understanding, and love is greater. The human love is greater than what people think it is, and the divine love is even more greater. So, in our spiritual awakening, please trust the process that there's something greater out there for us that is trying to show us that there is something to be lovable with. And you can reach me at angelicclarifications.com. You can find me on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. You can find me on Facebook. And then I have a podcast, Life Clarifications with Natasha, that all my live shows that are Monday and Wednesday at 4 o'clock Pacific time on Facebook and YouTube. You can find those on podcasts, Life Clarification with Natasha.
All
I'm
right.
all over the place.
Yeah, I'll link it in the description so that everyone has it under one
Yes,
little
yes.
segment. So,
Well,
thank you
thank
for
you for
coming
letting
on.
me be here. This has been a blessing. And, I'm just so grateful every time that I can spread the word that there is something greater out there, and it is love. I listened to the Shine Down song, How Do You Love? You know, you lose your way from the cradle to the grave, but yet it's how do we find those experiences and lessons to find our greater self?
Exactly. I love the wisdom you shared on this episode. So,
Well, thank you.
thanks once again for coming on.
Hmm. Blessings to you and blessings to all who are watching this and who aren't. May this because that's one thing I sent when I sent that divine love, I sent it around the world at the same time. So
And we'll see where it goes.
exactly. Okay.
All right.